Welcome, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. Donald Trump has withdrawn US troops from the border between Turkey and Syria. Taking the opportunity, Turkey has launched an assault on what it considers to be Kurdish terrorists in northern Syria. Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
In a moment, we want to get your help in understanding what's going on. But first, congratulations on your distinguished chair appointment at the University of Otago.
Well, thank you very much.
What does this appointment allow you to do?
Well, I think it enabled myself and other people appointed to this position to consolidate the links between the university and the wider community, which is, part of the recognition of this award. Obviously like to build on the Global Insight series that we've been working on, but also there are other new initiatives in the pipeline. For example, I'm directing the University of Otago Foreign Policy School, and we are developing a new national security summer school, which will kick off in February. And we hope that will become a regular annual fixture and become part of a dedicated dialogue on national security in this country. So that'll be a companion initiative to our regular annual foreign policy school. And there are another couple of things, but so we're seeking to continue to boost links between the university and the wider community.
The US troop withdrawal obviously has implications for the Americans, but it also has implications for Turkey, for Syrians, for Kurds. What does it mean for each of these players?
Well, it means, for one thing, a point of disagreement between the Turks and the Americans have been removed, at least in the short term, because the Turks were indicating that they were prepared to complicate relations with the United States if America did not thin its presence out in northern Syria. The reason the Turks wanted to move into that area using military force is because their number one adversary are the Kurds, who are a dominant part of what's called the Syrian Democratic Forces. The Americans see things quite differently. They believe they know the Syrian Kurds have played a key role in defeating the Islamic State organization. So there's this fundamental disagreement. So on the one hand, it has removed that point of tension by Mr. Trump apparently giving the green light for the Turks to move in, as they now have in the last 24 hours, into northern Syria. On the other hand, it's unleashed a big controversy in Washington and elsewhere that the United States has cynically abandoned a key partner. If it wasn't for the Syrian Kurds, who did much of the lion's share of the fighting against Islamic State, we would not have the improved security situation we do now. But we've also learnt in the last 24 hours that the Syrian Kurds engaged in a bitter fight with the Turks who are crossing the border to take them on. We now know they've effectively relinquished all control of the prisons where they detained Islamic State. So we now have a number of terrorists who are free to go as a result of that decision by the United States to give the Turks the green light to move in across the border into northern Syria. So it's a momentous chain of events.
We've spoken in the past about Kiwi jihadist Mark Taylor, who had been fighting with Islamic State in Syria and last known was in a Kurdish-controlled prison. You've just said about what's happening with the Islamic State prisoners. In light of these events, what should the New Zealand government be doing?
Well, I've always taken the view, as you know, that the New Zealand government position was irresponsible. And I think it becomes doubly irresponsible in light of what's now happened. The fact of the matter is, we experienced firsthand in this country on the 15th of March the terrible and traumatic effects of terrorism. Mark Taylor has been working for a barbaric organisation, Islamic State. He's been part of an organisation that's been inflicting the sort of treatment we saw inflicted on innocent Kiwis in Christchurch on citizens in Syria and Iraq. So, in a sense, when New Zealand's government said they were happy for Mark Taylor to come back if he could make his way to the embassy in Ankara and get onto a plane and come home, I think this is really basically, I think what's happened with the release of these prisoners is that the likes of Mark Taylor and other hardened jihadists will be able to regroup, reform, and reinitiate their activities of terror. And in a sense, I think that, it's easy to be wise after the event, but I think it was quite clear that New Zealand should have acted earlier. If it can't use its own forces to arrest Mark Taylor, then it should ask sympathetic governments in the region, and there are plenty, to detain this individual and make sure he's on a plane straight back to New Zealand, where he should face the full rigour of the law. After all, Bruce, he belongs and has never renounced it. Membership of an organisation which has carried out beheadings and other grotesque forms of mass murder. And it's high time he faced justice. The idea that we are quite relaxed about him just being free to go about his business in the Middle East, as if it's nothing to do with us. Well, the big lesson of Christchurch was that we are connected to the rest of the world, and we better get used to it.
What does Donald Trump's decision for that troop withdrawal and his various tweets that went on at that time, what does this tell us about US foreign policy?
I think at best it says it's confused. At worst it says it's incoherent. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Trump's pursuit of America first, he stresses the advantages for America of withdrawing. He seems to be impervious to the fact that America's security interests are inextricably interdependent with a number of other players. And America can't pick and choose its commitments. This decision by Mr. Trump, in the eyes of many Americans, including vocal critics within his own Republican Party, is symptomatic of America putting its narrow interests above its broader strategic interests, which it shares with its allies. And it's going to backfire. Mr. Trump's already shown signs of backpedaling. But, some of his decisions, delivered in sort of cartoon fashion via Twitter, do not instill confidence amongst America's allies. And increasingly, this cynical abandonment of a key player, the Kurds, in order to maintain a good relationship with Turkey, because it's a bigger player, I think will turn in something of a boomerang for the administration. And the other thing we should take into account here, once again, Mr. Trump has made a decision which has benefited Mr. Putin, which is a key backer of Syria, the Syrian government, and the Iranians. Let's just think this through for a moment. Mr. Putin will be delighted that the Syrian government can now extend its rule in that piece of territory in which the Islamic State detainees were being held by the Kurds. The Kurds have had to release them, which creates a vacuum, which means the Syrian government will be pushing forward into that space, which has been vacated by the Americans. And the Kurds cannot protect that space because they're fighting for their survival against the Turks. So this is, as for the Iranians, again, it will be another opportunity for them to extend their influence in the region. So the big winners of this at the moment seem to be the Turks, the Russians, the Iranians, and also the Syrian government. It's not exactly strategic wisdom, as Mr. Trump sometimes says that he has unmatched quantities of, but it certainly looks like it's going to be counterproductive.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Hoşça kal.